what can you do in the middle of winter to get your green thumb rolling? Well, not much options when we're talking about single-digit temperatures besides taking your growing indoors. And when we're talking indoors today, we're not just going to be talking about, inside your house. We're going to be talking about creating a growing space where you can both start your plants and grow your vegetables inside your, or on your property or wherever you're going to be growing. So we do a lot of greenhouse growing ourselves. And what we're going to be talking about today is how you as an individual can actually extend your season, grow your own food, start your own plants, and do it successfully. So there's nobody better, honestly, in this town, in my opinion, than the guest we have in our studio today. He's done a lot for us to help us in our procedures and practices and set up our systems. So we're really fortunate to have John here today. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Lindsay. It's a pleasure to be here with my friends.
Who wouldn't love growing in a greenhouse?
That's exactly right. The human civilization has really had a burning desire to bring the outdoors indoors for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Really dating to the Roman civilization. You can go back to 300 AD. The British really were the Europeans that really brought conservatories and greenhouses to the forefront in the whole plant hunting eras of the 16th and 17th century. So people have been in love with greenhouses and growing plants in greenhouses for a very long time.
Right. I know I love our greenhouses right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's 0 degrees outside and the sun is shining. Thank goodness the inversion's down almost. But you can go out there and I swear it's almost 70 in there. I was out there earlier checking them out and wow.
I mean, if you really want to go back to the beginning of time sort of stuff, like a lot of anthropologists say that as a civilization, we started out around the equator. We've slowly moved north and out of the year-round gardening season, as you might call it, as just the progression, populations grow, people want more space, whatever the reasons are. So I think it's absolutely innate in our human nature to need to be around plants that are growing.
Well, yeah.
That's how we survived. And now that we have taken ourselves away from that year-round growing zone, we have to figure out some way to feed ourselves, which, we do by shipping stuff in from other places and meats and stuff like that. But I think that there's something very soothing to the human soul just to be able to have something live and growing in your immediate proximity.
And we're very lucky in Boise because we have, over the course of 365 days, the majority of those days are sunny days, mm-hmm. and not overcast. And that's a very important factor when you look at the viability of growing plants in greenhouses, mm-hmm. Is to have enough days of sunshine to be able to pull that off. And in Boise, we have an extraordinary amount of days that are sunny.
Well, while we're talking about sunshine and the different, growing areas that you can have your plants in, let's talk about just the amount of light that you actually get off of a light bulb or a fluorescent light for growing in your house as compared to the lumens or the candles that you get out in a greenhouse.
Yes, then that's a dilemma and a deception. Many people think they can grow plants successfully in a normal house, and part of that is because the eye adjusts to light, and so you can go into a room that's dark and your eye will adjust to the darker light. But when you really measure light measurably by foot candles, most homes don't have sufficient light to grow any of the flowering crops or edible crops unless you have a sunroom. So that's the challenge, is in a normal floor plan of a home, it's very difficult to raise any flowering or edible crops. I mean, we're pretty much limited to some of the tropical foliage plants that, come from areas where the light's very low.
What we often tell people when they're coming into the, we talk about how to grow stuff at the nursery and such. And, the first thing we always say is you got to have heat. And then the second thing is you got to have light. And I think the number one failure that we get from people who come in and say, well, I grew them and they just, they got really big and tall and I thought they were doing great. I'm like, no. Short and squatty is what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And lots of leaves and very little stem. But the problem is that people will say, well, I've got a sunny window. And that sunny window, sometimes, maybe they'll get a couple hours of direct sunlight in there. But other than that, that indirect light is just not enough. And that when you put a light on top of it, it helps. But just with our experience, when you came into and measured our lights and showed that the light that was coming out of that cloudy day outside was still far superior than the fluorescent lights we had dropped and sitting right on top of the leaf
you had
surfaces.
your little meter
Foot
just
candle
right
meter,
on the
yeah.
bulb.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was,
it's-
I
you
think
really-
it was eye-opening
yeah.
for both of us
Yeah.
to see that.
It's ideal to be able to measure the light in measurable units, and there's actually a formula. I don't have it with me today, but you can use an f-stop on a camera to actually make your conversion to foot candles. But bottom line is, you really need about 1,000 foot candles of light to do a decent job raising seedlings, for example, in the spring. In a typical room, even with a window that's with an eave, with some sun coming in, it might be 50 foot candles or 75. So that's a long reach from 50 to 1,000 in order to have the sufficient amount of light. And fluorescent lights, like Lindsay's saying, you need huge, massive banks of them, or halide lights, in order to really create a sufficient amount of light.
So here's a question that a lot of people come in and ask, is that when they are using supplemental lighting because they're having to grow their stuff indoors, they don't have a greenhouse where they're getting all that light bouncing around in every direction. Do you, in a typical Boise winter, darkest day of the year kind of month, you're getting about how many hours of sunlight? I actually don't know that off the top of my head. What, about maybe 10?
Yeah, probably.
10
yeah.
a day?
I was going to say 4.
What would you equate that to in order to make sure that your plants are getting enough light indoors if you're seed starting? If you were to have an outside greenhouse, you could probably get away with not having any supplemental light, or would you still do supplemental light outside?
I think if you had a greenhouse exterior, you could get away without supplemental light probably. Indoors, you run them 24 hours because you're after vegetative growth, and so you could actually run them 18 hours a day, supplemental lights up to that length of time, and the more the better when you're starting seeds. As you mentioned, when seedlings are skinny and thin and falling over, that's the symptom or indication that you have insufficient light.
Well, yeah, because they're reaching for the light, so...
Yeah.
Can you overdo it, though?
I don't
think you
can.
can. And some people worry about burning, but the type of light, the spectrum of light coming off of fluorescence doesn't create burn. Incandescent light bulb can burn if you put it right on the foliage, but fluorescent lighting, normally you have them within an inch off of the foliage, and there's really no issue with burning per se.
Right.
So that there isn't a need for rest. That was something that I had read somewhere, but it was controversial that they don't need a time without light where they're kind of, I don't know, like we do as humans, sleeping.
Well, when they go into the flowering stage, they're going to need that light because that teaches them that they need, or that shows them that they need to start that reproducing cycle, which is the flowering. But when they're in the seedling stage, you want that light on as much as possible.
Right.
So the take-home message, you can't overdo it.
You
If
can't
you
overdo
leave
the
your grow lights on 24/7, you're really only doing good, not bad.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, you're going to have a healthier, more stout plant the closer you keep your lights and the longer you have it on.
You might start getting some surprise visits from the local authorities thinking that you're growing something illegal, but because your power bills are going up, there are people seeing lights out of your house at all hours.
There are a lot of lighting systems out there now that put out a ton of lumens or candles, however you want to call them, that are LED type or low power usage.
Correct.
So there are quite a few options. So if you were looking for something like that, I would definitely go ahead and research that on the internet, or go to one of your local nurseries and see what options they have for you.
There's some great energy efficient stuff out there. I've been really impressed with some of the lighting products that are out there that are way more user friendly for the home grower. I mean, I think a lot of people find the whole idea of getting lots of what are they called? Stands and complex lights and having a place to hang from the ceiling or take up a huge table. There's a particular type of lighting system that I'm sure several nurseries carry around here right now, but I can't even remember the name of it right now, the one that we love so much.
No, it has feet on it, and it's kind of just...
and
it hangs the light, and you could put a flat underneath it.
Well, and originally last year, and I'm killing myself that I can't remember the name of it. It'll
the
come
Sun
to me.
Blaster?
Yeah, the Sun Blaster. Thank you. It has a dome, and the light actually sits on the dome, and it means that your lighting setup doesn't take up any more space than a normal seedling tray would.
I
I think
see.
that's huge for some people. They can put it on a shelf
Yes.
and just stick
the
it
dome
away.
is raised, so you have room for your seedlings
Got
to
about
grow.
6 inches, yep.
And then you can also expand it by putting 2 trays together because they have the option to do them horizontally instead of
Yeah, you
vertically
can stack
on
them
the tray.
and
Yeah.
bank the lights together.
And it's portable.
It's
Right.
portable.
You
It's-
can move it anywhere.